Now let us see the pharmacotherapy of osteoporosis. This is a continuation class of drugs affecting on calcium balance. And now let us see what is osteoporosis. So let us see what is osteoporosis. So osteoporosis is it's a very common condition. So it's a disease which cannot be treated, and it's a condition in which the bones become weak and brittle. So usually the body constantly absorbs and replaces bone tissue, but in the case of osteoporosis, new bone creation doesn't keep up with the old bone renewal. So it is a chronic illness. It can be lifelong, and it is a systemic skeletal disease characterized by low bone mass, and this leads to increase in bone fragility and susceptibility to fractures with minimal trauma. So even a minimal trauma can cause fractures. So according to WHO, a bone mineral density less than 2.5 standard deviation below the young normal mean, that is known as osteoporosis. So osteoporosis is a disease that usually affects the elderly males and females, where the bones become thin and weaken from calcium depletion. The condition remains silent and is usually seen after a fracture occurs. So when a fracture occurs and you do a scan, or when you are doing an X-ray, so that is how you find out that the patient has osteoporosis. So it is one of the most serious consequences of menopause. In females, it is usually seen after menopause, and osteoporosis is the most common cause of fracture in older people. So in older people, it is one of the most common causes of fracture. There are different types of osteoporosis. Broadly speaking, there is primary osteoporosis and secondary osteoporosis. So primary osteoporosis, there is type 1 and type 2 osteoporosis. In primary type 1 osteoporosis, it is also known as post-menopausal osteoporosis, and as the name suggests, it occurs in women more than 50 years of age after menopause, and it results in decrease in the amount of trabecular bone, and which is a spongy bone inside the hard cortical bone. So what is the function of trabecular bone? The main function of the trabecular bone is to act as a reservoir in regulating the concentration of calcium and other mineral ions throughout the body. So it is also known as a cancellous bone, and it is a porous bone composed of trabeculated bone tissue. Now coming to type 2 osteoporosis, which is also known as senile osteoporosis, as the name suggests, occurs in people after 70 years of age and occurs more in women than in men. So there is thinning of both trabecular bone as well as the hard cortical bone in case of type 2 osteoporosis. Secondary osteoporosis. Secondary osteoporosis, as the name suggests, it occurs secondary to something, that is either after an illness or due to a medication. So there are certain diseases that can lead to osteoporosis. Some are malabsorption syndromes, liver disease, hyperthyroidism, type 1 diabetes mellitus, cancer, chronic renal failure, COPD, rheumatoid arthritis, sarcoidosis. So these are some of the illness that can cause osteoporosis. Now there are certain medications, if taken for a long time, that can lead to osteoporosis. The main culprit is glucocorticoid. So there are other drugs like unfractionated heparin, low molecular weight heparin, vitamin A, drugs like rosiglitazone, high dose methotrexate, furosemide, cyclosporin, antiretroviral therapy, cytotoxic or anti-neoplastic drugs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. So all these can lead to secondary osteoporosis. So how can we treat secondary osteoporosis? So the main treatment of secondary osteoporosis is to stop the culprit, that is either stop the drug that is causing osteoporosis or treat the underlying disease that is causing osteoporosis. Now let us see the risk factors for osteoporosis. So there are they can be classified into young people as well as older people, so or in general. So in young people or in young women, it can be due to low calcium intake, being underweight, and hypoestrogenism. So if you are giving estrogen to those who are having hypoestrogenism, it will increase the calcium absorption. So in others like postmenopausal status without giving hormone replacement therapy. So chronic cigarette smoking, chronic alcohol consumption, low trauma fractures, hyperparathyroidism, chronic steroid use. So all these are the risk factors for causing osteoporosis. Now let us see the common causes of osteoporosis in postmenopausal women. So those women who have had menopause, how how does osteoporosis occur? So first one is estrogen deficiency. As you all know, when there is estrogen deficiency, there is decreased absorption of calcium, and when there is mineral deficiency, that is decreased intake of calcium. Hyperthyroidism. So how does hyperthyroidism cause osteoporosis? So hypothyroidism causes increased excretion of calcium from the body. Calcium and phosphorus both are excreted out of the body in urine as well as stool, which results in loss of bone mineral. So this can lead to the bones becoming porous and osteoporotic. Now genetics. So certain genetic polymorphisms like polymorphism in the calcitonin receptors, estrogen receptor 1, vitamin D receptor, all can lead to genetic cause of osteoporosis, and even genetic tendency that if your parents are having osteoporosis, the chance of you getting osteoporosis is also very high. Now high levels of alcohol. So excessive alcohol can decrease bone formation and increase the bone breakdown. It can also kill, excess alcohol can also kill the osteoblast, which are the bone making cells. So all these can lead to osteoporosis. Constant inactivity and medication. So elderly people will be on a lot of medication for many diseases. So all these can lead to osteoporosis. So these are the 9 common causes of osteoporosis in postmenopausal women. How will you come to the diagnosis of osteoporosis? So a medical evaluation to diagnose osteoporosis and estimate risk of breaking a bone may involve one or more of the following steps. So usually osteoporosis is randomly found out when patient is having a fracture, or when you are going for some other illness, when you are taking an X-ray. That is usually how you find out osteoporosis. Otherwise, when a patient is coming to you, especially those patients who are elderly females or those who are postmenopausal females, when they come to you, you can come to the diagnosis of osteoporosis by a series of steps. First is medical history. You ask the patient whether patient is taking any other medication or other illness, or patient is having any other family history of osteoporosis. So all these can be asked. Physical examination of the patient and bone density test. So bone density test like DEXA scan. So in bone density test, what we do is that we use X-rays to measure how many grams of calcium and other bone minerals are packed into each segment of the bone. So that is how you do a bone density test. Then lab test can be done. That is lab test of vitamin D, calcium and other minerals. All these can be done by using simple blood test. So this is how you come to a diagnosis of osteoporosis. Now coming to DEXA scan. DEXA scan is densitometric evaluation by dual energy X-ray. So densitometric evaluation, that means it can estimate the density of bones. We can calculate how many grams of calcium and other bone minerals are packed into a segment of a bone. So it is the only test that can diagnose osteoporosis before a broken bone occurs, and it helps to estimate the density of bone and chance of breaking a bone. And at present, DEXA scanning focuses on 2 main areas, that is hip and the spine. What are the different lab tests that can be done? So it can calculate the blood calcium levels. So how much of a calcium is there in the blood. So 24-hour urine calcium measurement. Parathyroid hormone levels, testosterone levels in men, and 25-hydroxy vitamin D test to determine whether the body has enough vitamin D for the absorption of calcium. So all these are the lab tests that can be done in case of diagnosis of osteoporosis. What are the current treatment options for osteoporosis? So the treatment, as you all know, the main causes in elderly females postmenopausal. So the first treatment option which is most effective, that is definitely hormone replacement therapy. Calcitonin can be given, selective estrogen receptor modulators can be given, bisphosphonates or alendronate can be given, teriparatide, parathyroid hormone can be given. So all these are the treatment options for in case of osteoporosis. Now let us see the integrated approach to prevent and treat osteoporosis. What are the different methods we can use to prevent and treat the osteoporosis? So integrated approach means both non-pharmacological as well as pharmacological methods. So as you all know, non-pharmacological treatment is as much important as pharmacological treatment, and the first and the foremost important for non-pharmacological treatment is nutrition. So calcium is the main problem in case of osteoporosis. So we have to give calcium supplementation as much as possible. So 1200 milligram per day is calculated to be the calcium supplementation per day, and vitamin D as needed. If patient is having vitamin D deficiency, we have to supplement vitamin D as well. Now coming to exercise, weight bearing and strength training exercise can be advised to the patient. So there are multiple health benefits in case of for the cardiovascular system, for the nervous system, for the bones, for the muscles. So every system will be affected when it comes to exercise. Fall prevention and hip protectors in the frail elderly. So fall prevention exercises, so those exercises which increase the balance of the body. So avoiding alcohol and tobacco use, so avoiding nicotine completely, it can avoid the alcohol. So all these will be beneficial in case of prevention and treatment of osteoporosis. Treatment of osteoporosis. Bone loss in osteoporosis results from imbalance between two components, that is bone renewal and bone renewal process, that is bone resorption and bone formation. So the goal of treatment is to prevent bone fractures by stopping the bone loss and increasing the bone mass and the strength. So it can be either anti-resorptive or anabolic, increasing the bone mass and stopping the bone loss. Under anti-resorptive drugs, it can either be bisphosphonate or selective estrogen receptor modulators. Now let us see each in detail. Now let us see what are bisphosphonates. Bisphosphonates are also known as BPNs. So these are analogues of pyrophosphate, and there are three main generations, that is first generation, second generation and third generation. Under first generation there is etidronate and telludronate, second generation pamidronate, alendronate, ibandronate, and third generation risedronate and solitronate. Now let us see each in detail. Now coming to classification of bisphosphonates, there are three generations. First generation, second generation, third generation. First generation is the least potent and third generation is the most potent. First generation consists of etidronate, medronate, clodronate, telludronate. Second generation consists of alendronate, pamidronate, ibandronate, and third generation consists of, that is the most potent, that is risedronate, solitronate and neridronate. So these are the three generations of bisphosphonates. Now how exactly does bisphosphonates act? The cellular mechanism of action. So as you all know, osteoclast is the cells that can break down the bones. So osteoclast actively reabsorbs bone matrix. So the bisphosphonates, when we are taking it orally, so what happens is that they bind to the bone mineral surface, and the bisphosphonates is taken up by the osteoclast, and the osteoclast in turn gets inactivated and osteoclast becomes apoptotic and dies. So main mechanism of bisphosphonates is to inactivate or kill the osteoclast and thereby protecting the bone. Now what are the precautions when you are giving bisphosphonates? Whenever you are prescribing bisphosphonates to a patient orally, it is very important that you ask the patient to take it with a full glass of water following an overnight fast. Patient should be ideally fasting from 10 p.m. onwards in the previous night till 6 a.m. in the morning, and it should be taken at least 30 minutes before breakfast, and the patient should remain upright for another 30 minutes before lying down. So these are the precautions to be taken before taking bisphosphonates, otherwise it can lead to severe esophagitis, and it is very hard to treat esophagitis in these patients. So those patients who are having upper GI disease or gastroesophageal reflux disease, peptic ulcer, renal impairment are extremely contraindicated for oral BPNs. So those patients can be given either IV preparations by which large amount of BPNs can be made to enter the body. So these are the things to have in mind when you are prescribing bisphosphonates to a patient. So coming to the uses of bisphosphonates, bisphosphonates can be used for osteoporosis, hypercalcemia due to bone metastasis, osteolytic lesions of the bone metastasis, Page's disease of the bone. So all these are the uses of bisphosphonates. In osteoporosis, second and third generation BPNs are effective in preventing and treating postmenopausal osteoporosis in women, as well as age-related idiopathic and steroid-induced osteoporosis in both men and women. So alendronate is equally or more effective than HRT or raloxifene. Now coming to Page's disease, this is the disease due to abnormal osteoclast function, and they can arrest the osteolytic lesions and can reduce the bone pain and improve secondary symptoms. Long-lasting remissions may be induced. Now coming to hypercalcemia of malignancy, it is a very severe complication of metastasis. Now it can occur very commonly, and patients usually come with dehydration and altered consciousness. The treatment is with rapid rehydration with IV saline infusion, and pamidronate or solitronate can be given as effective drugs. Now coming to osteolytic bone metastasis, Parenteral pamethronate or solitronate arrest osteolytic lesions and reduce bone pain. Potent BPNs, especially solitronate, have shown independent anti-tumor property. So these are the uses of bisphosphonates. Now coming to alendronate, it is a highly effective second generation BPN which can be used in prevention and treatment of osteoporosis. It can be given to women as well as men and can be also be used in Page's disease. There can be severe adverse effects like esophagitis, gastric erosions, retrosternal pain, flatulence, headache, body ache, and initial fall in serum calcium level. So these are the side effects of alendronate. The FDA approved this drug on 7th April 2005 for prevention and treatment of postmenopausal and treatment of steroid-induced osteoporosis. So it effectively decreases the risk of vertebral as well as hip fractures. The dose is 5 to 10 mg OD or 35 to 70 mg per week. The dose of alendronate is 5 to 10 mg per day or 30 to 35 mg per week. It should be taken on an empty stomach with a full glass of water and should not be, the patient should not lie down for half an hour after taking the drug. It can lead to esophagitis, and esophagitis once occurs will be difficult to treat. So the maximum duration of therapy is only for 7 years, and the side effects can occur that can occur as esophagitis, myalgias, and less patient compliance. It can also cause retrosternal pain, flatulence, headache, body ache, and initial fall in serum calcium levels. Coming to pamethronate, it is a second generation bisphosphonate. It is available only as IV preparation because of poor GI absorption, and there is high frequency of gastrointestinal symptoms. So the adverse effects are thrombophlebitis of the injected vein, bone pain, fever, and leukopenia. A flu-like reaction may also occur initially due to cytokine release. So IV pamethronate is approved for hypercalcemia of malignancy and other skeletal disorders as well as Page's disease. Now acute and delayed hypersensitivity reaction can also occur with IV pamethronate. Coming to ibandronate, ibandronate is also a second generation bisphosphonate. It is administered as a single intravenous injection every 3 months over a period of 15 to 30 seconds. It is approved for prevention and treatment of osteoporosis related vertebral fracture in January 2006. The compliance is relatively good with patients, and the dose is 2.5 mg daily or 150 mg once a month. Solitronate. Solitronate is a third generation bisphosphonate. It is parenterally given, highly potent, and it's a third generation BPN, and it is indicated for hypercalcemia, bony metastasis, osteolytic lesions, and Page's disease. Osteoclastic activity is markedly suppressed, and in addition, anti-tumor effect may also be exerted. Now for hypercalcemia, it is more effective, faster acting than pamethronate, and therefore the drug of choice for hypercalcemia. So adverse effects are flu-like symptoms due to cytokine release, nausea, vomiting, body ache, and dizziness are also common. Renal toxicity can also occur, and osteonecrosis of jaw is a rare complication of IV high dose of BPN therapy. So solitronate is given 4 mg infused IV once every 12 months. So once in a year for a maximum up to 5 years. Has been used for osteoporosis in postmenopausal women who do not tolerate oral alendronate or risedronate. Risedronate, this is also a third generation nitrogen containing bisphosphonates. So FDA approved it in 1998 in March 27th for prevention and treatment of postmenopausal and steroid induced osteoporosis. It can reduce the incidence of vertebral as well as hip fracture, and the dose is about 5 mg daily or 30 to 35 mg weekly, which can be given orally. The side effects include esophagitis, myalgia, and less compliance from the patient side. Now generally, what are the side effects of bisphosphonates? The most important side effect is GIT upset or inflammation or erosions of the esophagus, also known as esophagitis. All oral BPNs are to be taken on an empty stomach. You should advise the patient to take it on an empty stomach with a full glass of water, and the patient is asked to not to lie down or take food for at least 30 minutes after taking the drug. The tab or the cap should not be chewed, and it should be only swallowed. So these measures are needed to prevent the contact of the drug with the esophageal mucosa in order to prevent esophagitis or erosions and ulcers. So it can also cause nausea, dyspepsia, and fever-like symptoms due to cytokine release, myalgias, arthralgias, increased risk of atrial fibrillation, transient hypocalcemia with secondary hyperparathyroidism, ocular inflammation, and bisphosphonate related osteonecrosis of the jaw. Even though it is rare, it can occur, that is osteonecrosis of the jaw. Now coming to selective estrogen receptor modulators. So these are non-steroidal synthetic agents whose activities on estrogen receptors are tissue selective. It can either act as an agonist or as an antagonist. Now let us see how it acts. So SERMs are basically ER ligands that can act as estrogen, that is agonist in bone, liver, and estrogen antagonist in breast tissue. So the classification is 1. Tamoxifen and analogs, that is tamoxifen, toramifene, droloxifene, idoxifene, and fixed ring compounds, that is raloxifene, lasofoxifene, azoxifene, and miproxifene, and ormeloxifene, and levormeloxifene. So these are the classification of SERMs. How should an ideal SERM should be? So an ideal SERM should be able to strengthen the bones, lower the LDL cholesterol and raise HDL cholesterol, relieve hot flushes, reduce breast cancer, reduce uterine cancer risk. So these are the characteristics of an ideal SERM. Coming to raloxifene. Raloxifene is a non-specifically acting on both estrogen receptors, that is ER alpha and ER beta. It acts as partial agonist in bone and the cardiovascular system, and antagonist in the endometrium and the breast. So it can prevent bone loss, it can increases the bone mineral density, agonist activity in lipid metabolism and coagulation profile. It can increase the bone mineral density by 0.9 to 3.4% and reduce the risk of vertebral fractures. It is less effective than bisphosphonates. Now coming to the pharmacokinetics of raloxifene, it is well absorbed orally. The dose is 60 mg once a day, and it can be used in prevention and treatment of postmenopausal osteoporosis in women, and can be used in prevention of breast cancer in those women who are having high risk of breast cancer or family risk factor of breast cancer. Now adverse effects are hot flushes, leg cramps, vaginal bleeding, and increased risk of venous thromboembolism. Calcitonin is a hormone naturally occurring naturally produced in the thyroid. When given to patients with osteoporosis, calcitonin can produce modest increase in bone mass because it slows the rate of which osteoclast absorbs bone. So it can inhibit the bone resorption by action on osteoclast by reducing contact of osteoclast with respective pit. It can reduce the remodeling space and significantly reduce the vertebral fracture than non-vertebral fracture in postmenopausal women. So the dose is 200 units daily by nasal spray, and it is approved for treatment but not for the prevention of osteoporosis. Adverse effects include nausea, flushing, epistaxis, and nasal stuffiness. Vitamin D. Vitamin D increases recruitment and differentiation of osteoclast precursor. It is also important for absorption of calcium. So it is very important for the treatment of osteoporosis. So reduces bone remodeling. It can also act on osteoblast cell to increase the bone mineralization indirectly by maintaining plasma calcium concentration. By maintaining the plasma calcium concentration, it can prevent osteoporosis to a certain extent. Osteoporosis due to hyperparathyroidism, and the dose is 100 to 2 lakh international units of vitamin D2 or D3 orally, daily, or every 2 months for 6 months. Teriparatide. Teriparatide is a recombinant human parathyroid hormone analog. FDA approved it in 2002 for severe osteoporosis. Only agents that increases new bone formation, or it can be called anabolic, and it can increase the axial bone mineralization but has no effect on cortical bone. So it is also for treatment of osteoporosis in men and women who are at high risk of breaking a bone as a result of taking steroid medicines for a very long time. So steroid induced osteoporosis can also be beneficial if you are taking teriparatide. Teriparatide can significantly increase the bone mineral density, especially in the spine. So it is faster acting than bisphosphonates and SERMs. So it can be very beneficial in case of glucocorticoid or steroid induced osteoporosis, and the dose is 20 microgram per day subcutaneously. Side effects include leg cramps and dizziness. So this is all about today's topic, that is treatment of osteoporosis. Please go through all the slides in calcium metabolism and as well as treatment of osteoporosis. There will be a quiz coming shortly. Thank you.